What's going on, everybody? It's your boy Danny the Bull here with hello Kay. What's going on, Kay? How you doing?
Yo, how's it? What's good, Danny?
All good, man. It's been a couple weeks since we chatted,
Yeah,
and I
yeah.
feel like
It's been a
our,
been a minute.
our chats are always good ones. We got some people in the house here.
Yo, yo.
Doge, what up, Doge? Josh C in the house. Send
I'm
this
gonna
to
I'm gonna
Twitter.
catch headphones on just because the volume's a
Yep,
bit low for me. 1 second.
go for it. Josh C wants no bird noises. No promises, Josh. I kind of got used to Gnocchi. All right. I feel like he's part of the Veve family.
Oh yeah, chilling
All
up
right.
here.
So you need to give love to Gnocchi. All right. We got some mascots in Veve. He's one of them. So what's going on, man? How you been?
Yeah, I've been okay. I think I showed you earlier, so I've got like some more shelving, and yeah, I've basically got like a bunch of smart stuff kitted out, so I could be like, Alexa, turn off the ceiling light. Hey,
Oh, look
Ale
at
Alexa, turn the backlight blue.
that.
Hey,
Oh,
Alexa, turn on the ceiling light. Yeah.
look at those
Alexa, turn off the
upgrades,
backlight.
man.
Yeah, so I've got
Nice.
like a bunch of stuff in my room that's all smart, like voice controlled.
I like
I'm
it,
gonna get
dude.
like more lights like on the back of here, like with the displays. So because some of these displays they've got like they look really nice with lighting. Like these ones here, they're like kind of transparent, like this kind of stained glass effect. So with lights behind them, it should look really cool.
Makes them pop.
Yeah.
So we'll start off with, I guess, some market talk, man. What are your thoughts on the overall market? Last time we talked, I think it was on Comiverse.
Oh
You
yeah.
you said that you thought you were feeling for the first time that the bottom might be, and you still feeling that way, or have you flipped back to bearish
Um, as in overall market or like specific to OMI or VV or
overall?
oh right. I okay, so at the time, like with the amount of data that we had, it looked like okay, it could have been like a local bottom, but now that there's been more data, I think, and I had a session with God's Entry, another one as well. He shared some more data with me that I had overlooked myself. I think the bottom is nowhere near in. I think we're going like straight down now, and like based off of the stuff that we discussed and God's Entry, like he's a very, very like analytical guy with a good track record to back him up. Like his track record is amazing. Um, and he's like, to quote him, he said to me, 100% we're going down. And then he drew out two scenarios of how we could go down. One of those scenarios is from here, we just go kind of straight down and then consolidate and then we kind of crawl back up, right? And he said the scenario that scares him is if we go up from here. And the reason why it scares him is he drew it out and it's like he basically overlapped it with the inverted yield curve. And so he was basically kind of showing me we could kind of go up. We could even go up to like, potentially even all-time highs for Bitcoin. Like that's possible, right? And then we kind of come down, form a bit of a head and shoulders. And then at that point, we could basically the whole market could roll over for like the next 8 years. And every year we just go down and down for like 8 years straight. And that would be the scenario that scares him.
That's the lost decade.
Yeah, basically a lost decade of like gains for people. I guess if you want to short the market, then yeah, you could probably make money that way. But yeah, that's like the worst case scenario for him. Most likely, for the next like my original prediction was like for like whole of this year, we're probably just going to keep going down. But I predicted we'd probably finish the end of the year higher than where we started at. Um, but now I'm not sure if that's going to happen.
Yeah. I still feel like we're going to be choppy this year. I don't know. I feel like a lot of things are priced in, and now even the Fed. I think Jay Powell was a bit more hawkish in his remarks said that they might raise rates more than originally anticipated. But I think there's so much money floating around still waiting to jump in that ultimately, once things kind of like once inflation dies down and stuff and the Fed stops raising rates,
Yeah,
time to
exactly.
tell. How has that changed your plan of action?
I mean, I made the video a year ago, right? Not a year ago, sorry, like over 6 months ago, when I said, oh, I'm selling like nearly all my Veve stuff, because in that video I broke down that, one, NFTs are highly speculative and they're very, very risk on, like risk on as we call it, and when the dollar, strength of dollar goes up, risk on assets, they tend to basically tank. And NFTs have never like had a proper bear market that they've, that you've got data to look back on. Crypto, it has, and OMI has gone through bear markets as well. So there's like some data there at least. And so, my logic was the research that I showed is, with rate hikes, you need your rate hikes to basically be in a like equivalent to the inflation rate in order to curb it, right? Like inflation goes up 10%, then overall over the longer period of time, you need to increase rates by at least 10% as well to at least break like balance out. And with like true inflation, can't remember what the figure was, but it was like 20% or something stupid, right? And so we at the time 6 months ago, like last year June or whenever, right? Like we hadn't had anywhere near enough rate hikes to balance out 20% inflation. And so at the time I was like, there's nowhere for us to go except down. And so I was like, I'm not going to hold a very, very speculative risky asset, which in this market, that's quite illiquid as well. So I made the decision to like sell off a very big chunk. I just hold sets that I don't care the value of, because if I don't care how much it's going to be worth, then I won't be like like mentally frustrated when things like go wrong and whatnot. Now it's like, okay, we probably are still going to go down. Inflation hasn't been entirely curbed, but yeah, it's not as bad as it was like 6 months ago, I'd say. But I don't think we're in a market for recovery yet. Like, I don't think this is an investor's market. I think this is a trader's market.
Yeah, no, that's good points. It's hard to predict these things. My thing is just I try to just DCA on pullbacks. I never chase candles, green candles. Um, you're still buying OMI, right?
Um, so I did buy some OMI at like was it like 0008889, like kind of below 0009. I bought some there. Um, and then it kind of like rallied to like 00125, which was kind of like the price point I was expecting it to go to before a pullback. I didn't expect it to go to 00125 so quickly though, which is probably why we had such a sharp pullback. But this is kind of like the range. Like I've shared my figures with you, like my levels. That
Yeah.
00093 one, I shared that with you guys, and
Yeah.
like literally it double bottomed exactly at that point. And that's that was like a key level for me. If I was to buy more OMI, like if I had $1,000, right? Like my current levels where I'd kind of scale in is 00093. I'd probably drop like 25% there, so $250 there. And then I would wait for 00085. I would drop another $250 there. And off the off chance that something like there's some random black swan event, and then it dips back down to 0007s, I'd save 50% for there. And that would be like my scaling plan, right? People can obviously adjust the percentages for like their own risk tolerance, but those are like key levels that I would look out for. I wouldn't go in all in at 00093 or like whatever the spot market price is right now, probably 00093. But yeah, I bought some there, and if it goes down to 00085, then yeah, I'll buy a bit more there as well. But anything can happen in this market. Like, OMI could, like, I think the bottom level that God's Entry was calling was 0004.
Yeah.
And one of the worst things that I've experienced that can happen, right, is you've spent all your money at like some level that you've like convinced yourself, oh yeah, it's not going to go lower, when things can always go lower, right? And you don't have any liquidity left for like even lower levels. And that's happened to me in the past, where I was like convinced. And So this is like what I don't like when people say this, right? Okay, I mean, okay, I don't like it, but they're entitled to say this stuff, right? Is when they say it doesn't matter which price point you buy because or I'll
5
quote
years from
them.
now, you won't care.
Yeah,
3
yeah,
years from now, you
exactly.
won't care if
Yeah.
you
So
bought a
yeah,
discover at that
because they're
level.
like, I'm here for the long term, blah blah blah. I don't care what price point I'm buying at. But most people, and even the people who say that, I'm pretty sure if they had a choice right now, would you want like, I don't know, 10 million Omi, or would you want 20 million Omi? Your
Right.
choice. And pretty much everyone with like, more than a brain cell would pick the 20 million, right? And so you don't want to like eliminate that opportunity. And the thing that gets people is the FOMO. Is like, what if it doesn't go lower? Then I'll regret not buying more at the lower price point. But when you ask yourself, like in terms of risk and reward, like what are you actually losing if the price goes up? You're not really losing anything. All you're doing is you're making less gains, right? But if you were to buy all in at one price point and then the price drops 50%, then you are actually losing, right? Because you just
Yeah.
lost 50%. And I know some people will say, "Oh, you don't lose until you sell," like all of that stuff. But like that to me is just a bit of a, like it's partly a coping mechanism, but it's partly also like just a just a way to like I guess kind of ease your mental health because you
Rationalize it.
yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
because you've kind of FOMO'd in and made a bad play there, but
Yeah, I
yeah.
mean, I'm not as patient as you, and we've been talking for a while about what we're buying, how much homie we're buying at what price points. You've been
Mm.
really patient sitting on your cash. I don't throw all my money in at once. I try to space it out, but when it got to that 0007 level in November, that's when I kind of like
That
went.
was a good buy though. That was a very
Yeah,
good buy.
I
Like,
don't regret that.
yeah.
But yeah, I agree with that. My collectibles here, shout out to him. And it's actually funny because that's my next question I have a list of questions here and topics to talk about.
Oh yeah.
A lot of Amazon talk right now. And that was going to be my question to you because Amazon, rumor has it that they're going live with their NFT marketplace
Mm.
soon. What do you think that means for the space? Like, what do you anticipate that marketplace to look like, and how do you think it affects the whole space?
Yeah. So I think I did something I wasn't meant to do. Like, so if you go to my Twitter and if you search for tweets from me from Surprise Cat, and if you search a tweet that contains Amazon NFT market, I think like those keywords in there, you find a tweet from me back in like October of 2021 or something like that, right? I think it was October. Yeah, it was October 2021, I think. Yes, should be October 2021. And like so for Amazon's NFT marketplace, the lead developer on the contracts for that marketplace, he's a very good friend of mine. Him and I, we like, we hung out like nearly every day in London. So he was working at Amazon under the like for AWS like Amazon Prime services, right? And so he was working in the London office, and he was telling me at the time because he was really into smart contracts. Me and him basically we used to do bug bounties on Veve, right? So we'd find like all sorts of random bugs here, and he was way better than I am. Like he's by far the best developer I've like had the experience of meeting, and I've met some pretty good developers, right? And he's quite young as well. He's in his late 20s. He's just like one of those guys who's like his brain is different, right?
Yeah.
And so he was basically telling me at the time like oh, like all of this stuff with like I'm going to master the EVM, like he was telling me all about all these crazy things in the last bear market, like, oh, do you know about like mempools and blah blah blah. Like basically all of these like kind of ways where you can like make like really low risk money, and he did pretty well, like like exploiting a lot of like these kind of DeFi like protocols, right? And by exploiting I mean not anything illegal, but like like finding
Mhm.
arbitrage opportunities and things like that. And so he basically introduced me to one of the lead devs for AWS blockchain in San Francisco. He's the guy who I met. He's based in the US. He's called Emil. Really, really nice guy. Like he's done like loads of talks for AWS blockchain. Like he knows his stuff. And so my friend was like, yeah. So I was speaking to Emil, and he thinks, like I'd be good for this role. And because basically the role that he got asked to interview for, it's a very, very difficult role to find the right person for. Like apparently only one other person was considered for interview, and that person was doing a very similar role at Google already. Um, so
Yeah.
basically, they interviewed my friend, and they were like, the person interviewing my friend literally said to him that my friend knows more about smart contracts than that guy who was interviewing him. Like that's how like top level he is.
Knowledgeable.
Yeah, and so basically, so just for context, right? The average salary in the UK is like I think it's like 40,000 pounds, right? Um, and so if you're on a 100K salary in the UK, that's very, very good. And my friend in the UK, like at AWS, so he was on like 120K, right? So that's like very, very top end, that's like top 1%. And so when he got the job offer, they said they were going to move him to San Francisco to work on this Amazon NFT stuff and some other stuff, right? And so I was kind of trolling and I was like, oh, you should ask him for like some stupid salary, like 400K. And he's like, should I do it? Because he was like, he didn't want to come across as arrogant. And so he's like, oh yeah, for like compensation, like, would you guys do like 400K? And they're like, okay. I didn't even question it, just said okay. And so he was like,
You should
oh
ask
crap,
for
I could maybe,
500K.
yeah, he's like, maybe I should have asked for more. But he was like, and basically he had to like get this special form, right? Because his level at Amazon, like they have these levels like called like L1, L2, that this kind of thing. And so that salary was like way higher than what his level should be allowed to be given. And so he had to get like the manager and some like senior person at Amazon to like basically, like authorize this. And so he moved to San Francisco and he's been there like ever since. He's been doing some other stuff like he doesn't just like work on like the contracts for like the market and stuff. He does other stuff because AWS blockchain is like a newer team. And it's one of the teams where they didn't have any layoffs because Amazon's like really investing into this
Yeah.
Web3 thing. And so I met up with my friend again when I went to Decon in LA. He came with us. So some people at Decon would have met him. He was like this Korean guy. Um, and yeah, he's like just kind of kept me in the loop. And yeah, now things are like starting to roll out. But he was telling me that everyone in like this AWS blockchain team, like they are like high level because if you're Amazon as a dev, you're already high level. Like just having Amazon on your CV, like people, like you're kind of like a celebrity, like straight away.
Yeah.
But it being at like such a niche thing within Amazon, in like a brand new team that's like proper like cutting edge. Like he's probably like a handful of people globally that like can actually sit in that role. So yeah, like he's if he's been kind of sharing like like random things like with me that he's working on. Nothing that's like like super confidential, but like like what kind of technologies and things like he's like looking at, because he had to do the research for like blockchains and things as well. Like that was the first thing he did there was like researching blockchains. um but yeah, like as far as like the Amazon NFT side of things go, like the whole concept was they roll out the marketplace. They initially use it as a way of like kind of bridging their existing Amazon Prime consumer base, like partners on Twitch, that kind of thing, to like allow them to launch collections. And it's obviously
Streamers
going to
on
be
Twitch, right?
exactly, yeah,
Streamers.
streamers
Yeah.
on Twitch, yeah. Like stuff where it makes sense, right? Um, because it's a way of like kind of enabling those kind of ongoing royalties to their content creators. So then you get more people, creating content and using a platform, then more people viewing it, and then Amazon gets more revenue, that kind of thing. Um, but yeah, they like I think I mentioned on the stream before when I was talking about like things like Blanco's block party and things like Amazon's, like they've already been like dabbling with Web3, and now they've got the marketplace
Do you
coming
think
in. So
Web3 will embrace Amazon, or it's like, it's too like mainstream and not Web3?
depends how they play it, right? Because I don't think like my friend, he has like much kind of influence in the business direction of the product. He just creates
Codes,
the
yeah.
code, right? Like, he doesn't determine how the product should like how it should function, or like how it should be like targeted to audiences and things like that. That's a business decision. So I suspect they are going to kind of use it as a way to target the mainstream. But the thing with Amazon, right, is because of the talent and the capital and like Amazon has built tools that other developers globally use, right? Like because of how well positioned they are, if they ever need to pivot, it wouldn't be a very difficult thing for them to do. If they decided, oh, the mainstream thing isn't working for us, let's just make it more OpenSea-ish with like the full visibility of wallets, interoperability, all of that stuff. Like give them like a month and they'll do it like they'll do it to like a very good standard. So yeah, because of their capabilities, if they ever do need to like change things, like it's fine, and they're not really like it's not like they're at a lack of capital or funding or anything like that. They got a lot of money to spend on this stuff.
Yeah. You think this is a natural fit for Veve? I think that's what a lot of people are thinking. And David, you said that they would look to protect their royalties by partnering with places like, eBay and things like this. You think Veve is a natural fit for them when it comes time for interoperability?
Yeah, so that's the thing is what I was going to say is with interoperability, because again, that's the one thing that's going to hold him back is if the stuff isn't interoperable, then there's no way that it can go on Amazon, right?
Yeah.
Because a lot of the tooling is improving. So things like all of the kind of cross-chain support, for example. I'm pretty certain IMX will probably have a plugin with Amazon anyway. So anything that's on IMXL2 would pretty easily be able to get ported over to Amazon as a collection. And yeah, in that case, I think Amazon would be an ideal market for Veve stuff because it's mainstream people already that they're targeting. So Amazon's kind of created that audience for you. And then yeah, like assuming like market conditions improve and Amazon does something like phenomenal that like really starts getting people into NFTs. I think the way that we probably see some traction is if they go about the gaming route, like
Yeah.
partnering with top Twitch streamers, and having those streamers release like like how a lot of these streamers they'll release like Twitch packages with like emojis and things that only subscribers can use. Basically NFT'd versions of like that kind of like loyalty stuff. Um, if they start doing that, and then like fans of these streamers then start buying the stuff, and then they start seeing like some other stuff on there, some of them might buy some Vv stuff. Then yeah, then it will kind of start to work.
Yeah.
But like I said many times, right, it would have to be like very like a collective effort, like with Amazon and like other platforms. Like it would be like a whole like industrial shift in that direction. That's the only way it would like have any chance of working. Which is why, and that is still far away. Like even with Amazon's marketplace, it's going to take them a long time. Like this is literally like not even day one yet.
Yeah.
It's like yet to launch, so it's going to take a long time. And so that's partly why I'm like very bullish on the whole like target the Web3 side first and make them into collectors, because that's where your demographic is, and that's where it's going to be for a long time.
Yeah. And, there was, I guess Veve is also like kind of like moved the goalpost on interoperability, whereas they said that they said it was coming for artists, particularly after that IMX migration. Dan has said in the past that like it's coming soon. Recently, David said that they're looking to protect people or whatever. Do you think like there's an issue like with the code? And I've heard rumors of this also. Maybe like the code isn't ready. Maybe there's like an issue on the IMX side with making these things interoperable.
Yeah. I suspect it's just pretty much technical debt, and this was always like, and in the past, right? If it was a year ago, I wouldn't have blamed them, but since a year ago, I was quite vocal about it. Other people were about, it was a bull market. And okay, so just to go back to a year ago, what I was saying, right, is it was a bull market, right? And that's the ideal time to raise funding when it's a bull market, because VCs just chuck money at anything,
Right.
right? And so I was like, I was making all these kind of like models and speculations, and I was like speculating, you know what? Like I would value Vv at like a $2 billion company at that point in the bull market, right? Like I
Right.
thought that was a fair valuation. And so I was like saying, hey, if they sold 1% of their company, that would net them like 20 million, right? and I'm pretty sure there were people who would have like paid that. And so with 20 million, assuming they hired top tier people like my friend, 400K, right? Let's say they hired like 3 tech leads. That's more than enough, right? That's 1.2 million for a year. And, let's say they spend the other 800K hiring like 6 good senior engineers, 150K each, right, for a year. That and you had them dedicated to like basically fixing all your technical debt. Like the app, if they had done that a year ago, I think the app would be like squeaky clean right now. Like it would be smooth. Like you would have like no randomness issues, like from things breaking upon like releases and things like that. Okay, yes, it probably would actually still happen, but it wouldn't be like to this extent where releases take longer, things that then need to be fixed take longer when they are released and because something goes wrong. It would just be a smoother experience, because when we look at the ultimate feature for a user, right? Specifically, if I was to use MCP as an example, ultimately, what people will have for this first part is some points on a profile, right? And I look at other platforms like I don't know if Quid has it. I don't know, but Hero and McFarlane, right? You can already see points on your profile, and it was something that was like there from like day one because
Yeah.
it should never have been. Well, they actively engineered their product from day one and they considered that point system, right? Now, Vivi said that they did consider it, and actually, you know what? Vivi used to have the MCP points in the app. Actually, that it used to be there, and it is still actually there under the auction. So if you go to the auctions, you see like this little thunderbolt looking symbol with a 1 next to it. So that's the old MCP points, which again is kind of a it's like kind of weird because they removed it from everywhere else, but they left it on the auctions for some reason, and it serves no purpose whatsoever. So I think it's just something they forgot. And if they just forgot it, then that's kind of sloppiness in my opinion. But yeah, anyway. Yeah, so they used to actually have the points. So I know that they did think about it when they built the app, but I guess the way it was built, right, was probably not the best way. It was built in a way where it's like the querying is very inefficient, and they probably didn't consider, how long it would take as people get more and more collectibles over time because you're, indexing them all and like,
Right.
working out
It's kind
for
of
each one how
frustrating.
long they've held it,
Right.
and so yeah, they at the time they probably just didn't maybe consider that, and now it's like, oh crap, like now we're at this stage where it takes ages. We need to do re-engineer that the way that this works now. Otherwise, because these kind of things like it costs more money, like it uses more resources, which would cost more money, and so they need to do it in a way where it's like efficient and quick and like so I get it, right? They probably found something and they're like in the beta testing and they're like, yeah, this really needs to be reworked. But the way that I would have liked, right, if a year ago, if they had kind of just hired a couple of really top tier tech leads from like Amazon or Google and like some good level senior engineers at that point in time. I know they're doing it now. They're trying to hire more now, but it's not a case of hiring more now. It's like hiring a few people that just know their shit and
Right. They
hiring
don't
them
need
back
to
then.
hire like 40 people. They just need to hire like a few good ones.
Yeah, because it's VV in itself is not like it's not like Illuvium where they've got like 4 different products or something like that, right? Or like IMX where they're constantly releasing entire new products and have so many verticals that they work out of, like the blockchain migration side of migrating products, the passport, the games, the marketplace. Like VV's like is VV, right?
Yeah.
It's just, but even though it's like one product, right? It's just about making sure you've got like 1 or 2 people who really, really know their shit, who can look at the app and just basically splurge out their knowledge and experience and be like, this is the right way to engineer this feature, and this is why, and this is how it should be done, and this is how it's going to be done.
Yeah.
And that kind of knowledge and experience, it's expensive, yes, but that investment of money into that kind of level of experience and knowledge, that pays so much dividends in the long term. because if they had done it a year ago, I think a lot of the things that we are now kind of feeling the pain of, I think they could have been avoided, or
Yeah.
not been as bad. And that's something I was saying like a year ago, right? But it wasn't like it wasn't like noticeably done that I could tell. So, if you have the ability to fundraise in a bull market, and that, and you've had good cases presented, to yourself to like do it, and that it's going to help your product, but you choose not to do it, then that is your fault.
Yeah.
That you didn't do that, and so you will get the blame for that, and I will blame you,
Yeah.
as many other people will. But yeah, like that was the decision they went down, and now they face the repercussions of it.
Yeah. I was thinking, I was talking on the Comeyverse again. Dan Lee brought up a good point. We all tend to think that, this company swims in cash and whatnot. And I think Javier Torres has been talking about it also. When you break down the fees, like Apple and Google taking 30% off of gem sales and then having to pay out the licensors, we're not sure how much that is. But then the fact that every gem is a liability, right? Because when people cash out, they need to be accountable and cash people out. So whatever the vault values that everyone else has, like how much are they as profitable as we thought they were? I think kind of the perception has been that they're making boatloads of money because we see all those gem purchases, but they have to cash all those gems out when people, cash out their gems.
Yeah. So okay, so if I was to use examples like Quid, for example, right? Like I'm pretty sure Quid makes negative revenue because like the app, if you haven't used it, right? Like just for like the sake of like, context, like download it and try it out. The app is actually very smooth and very like comprehensive. It's got so many features in it, and it doesn't do like all the like weird like kind of randomly logging out crap and like randomly restricting your account nonsense, or like the app just works. And even still, like the amount of revenue that Quid generates compared to Veve is minuscule, and for them to kind of maintain those features and build more features at a faster rate than Veve, if they were relying just on their revenue, they'd be going deep into the negatives like year on year, right? But they don't. And well, if it was just revenue, then yeah, probably. But in terms of their cash flow, I'm pretty sure they're still cash flow positive, and that's because of the huge investment they took from Animoca Brands, right?
Yeah.
And so even if Veve, was not as profitable as we expect, and to be honest, most startups, they're not really profitable in the first couple of years anyway. Yes, like Veve has like kind of been working for like a couple of years now, and they've made stupid amounts of money because of the good timing and whatnot. Even with the app store fees and things like that, like that was kind of like a like the opposite of a black swan. Like they hit the
Except
they
in
hit the
shit.
perfect they hit
Yeah.
the perfect cocktail of like events, perfect timing, perfect like niche product with NFTs, and like and it had a working like I say working, like it worked, the app, like you could buy stuff in it. And so they had like the perfect combination of things to like just make stupid amounts of money. And I said it before, like no company should have made that much, like in terms of like gross like revenue as they did, right? Like after their overheads and things, like I'm sure
Yeah.
they had tons of overheads. Like yes, they're probably nowhere near as making nowhere near as much money as people think, but I'm certain they still made like a good amount, right? But this is the thing, is what they should have done, and Immutable X did this. So Immutable X in the bull run, and this is why I really like Robbie. Like he's got his head screwed on, right? Is in the
Robbie is
bull
who?
run,
People who don't know.
Robbie, the co-founder of Immutable,
Yeah.
Robbie Ferguson, right? Is in the last bull run a year ago, when I was out there saying, hey, you know what, like Veve should really like sell like just 1% of their company. They'll get like 20 million, and that will like sort out their, development funding for like, at least a few years. Um, if they had done that, like, yeah, fine. But what Robbie did is he raised 200 million in like from equity sales, right? Like 10 times what I was hoping Veve would do. And what did he do? He went and hired like freaking half of Amazon into the company. Like if you go on their LinkedIn, right? Like just on the people, because not everyone adds CV and their jobs and stuff on LinkedIn. But just on the people who did, so this number is going to be conservative, is they've got like 120 people on their engineering team. And if you look at these people, right, they aren't like just random engineers that you find on Fiverr or something. Like each and every single one that I've like clicked on, like they have freaking good experience. They've got like principal engineers who are at like Facebook and Google and Amazon. They've got like tech leads from like these companies as well. One of their principals was the principal engineer at Atlassian, which is like the company that makes Jira and like other products that pretty much every dev team will use. And he was the principal engineer for like 8-9 years there. So that guy is going to cost them at least half a mil, at least.
Yeah.
So they rent and raised 200 million in the bull market, right? So that's why, IMX has been churning out product after product, and every time they release something, it's not like, oh, hey, we released it, we need to recall it because it's broken. I mean, like it just works. Like the Unity SDK they released recently, it works. The Passport, it works. You know, the Veve migration, which was highly experimental, the first time they'd ever done it, when they migrated, were there any issues? Or did they have to be like, oh no, we need to redo the migration? I know it just worked because of the amount of money they've invested into their technical talent. Like it's basically like IMX kind of did what I wanted Veve to do, but they did it to like 20,000 levels more than what I would have thought is reasonable. Like they
And we
just
didn't
and
wait.
that yeah, and that's testament to Robbie and his background because Robbie's a highly technical guy. He knows the more you invest early on into the team that's going to build out the product, the technical side, the less friction there is with your users, and the more adoption you're going to get. You're going to get a lot more retention of users as well. If the tech isn't like screwing up like every week, things like that. Um, and so, yeah, that's ideally what I would have liked Vivi to do as well, like back then a year ago in a bull market, if they just sold like just 1%. Now, if you want to fundraise, it's a lot more difficult, right? And you're not going to get as much money as you would have gotten in a bull
No, not in
market.
the bear
Like,
market. Yeah, the money's not
yeah,
flowing around.
exactly. So, um, to their benefit, right? Like they have at least made a couple of good level hires like Nestor and Mitch, and that's why I feel like there's been a difference. Otherwise, things just would have kept going like exponentially downhill. I think they hadn't done that. But like the opportunity that they had there and what could have been, I think, is just unfortunate. But hopefully, next cycle they're not like they're not as conservative with their spending on the product. Because I know David went out on like an AMA and he said himself, Dan and I, we look after every dollar, da da da. And I've seen it happen in other startups. My startup was the same, right? And we had like a bunch of contractors who basically just went up straight to the founders and they told them, you guys need to put more budget into the tech side because for every like $10 that you spend, the returns that you're going to get in terms of improved productivity is going to be like 10 times as much, and it's not even going to take a long time to reap those rewards. Like it's quite quick. Like just buying one of your developers like a higher spec laptop,
Yeah.
the amount of time that they spend writing some code is probably going to get like cut into like half, and that's going to increase your productivity. Sometimes you're trying to install a program and like it doesn't work on like some janky old laptop, but it's easy to run like a higher spec MacBook or something. Just stuff like that. It does add up over time, and so these small little like investments into the product team, like the tech team, the tech side, good hires, like good level hires as well. Like it all pays dividends. Like you can't be cheap on that side. Otherwise, you're gonna lose more money in the long term, and that's why I really wanted Vivi to kind of not go down that path, which is why I was like so stubborn on like, yo, raise some money, hire some good bang level tech leads, and just you know let them just fix some of the stuff that you guys are struggling with. Um, but yeah, I'm still kind of hopeful that hopefully they've learned and now they've seen other projects where they can learn off of, like IMX and Illuvium, where they've kind of done some of these things that I wanted Vivi to do in terms of like that side of like fundraising and hiring. But it's still yet to be seen, how it all
Do you
rolls
get
out.
the
That's why I'm
sense?
waiting.
Yeah. Do you get the sense that there are other voices in the room now, also like Mitch, who have sway over direction? Do you get that sense?
Um, I don't know, because they haven't really like introduced anyone additional to us, right?
Nestor's kind of like in the background.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, Nesta's the CTO, right? And so he definitely has influence over like, I mean, that is part of his job role to like kind of help Dan and David prioritize and like, go through what's feasible, what's not feasible, like what they're gonna need in terms of like resources and whatnot. So um yeah, like outside of Mitch and Nesta, who are the newer hires, like I don't really know who else would have like much significant influence. And I think yeah, if they had taken like some form of like significant investment in the bull market, I think that would have also brought on board more voices that would have had some influence because now they're stakeholders. But um, the risk is always, you bring in people who want to basically transform your company into something that goes against your vision. That's always the
Right.
risk as well, right? Is when you
Yeah.
sell equity, you might sell it to the wrong person, and so there's a heavy vetting process involved as well. Um, so yeah, that it's a bit of a like a double-edged sword. And I think maybe the reason why they didn't take investment in the bull market is because they were kind of scared of like what if they not vet the person who wants to invest well enough, or the group or whatever, because we already know they made they brought on board one really bad investor in the past who kind of is now still suing them. So yeah, I think maybe that
Got to
experience
be
maybe
careful who
scarred
you
them.
partner with.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Here, Sean asks, Dan, are you still stacking? I'm still purchasing OMI. I have slowed down a little on the OMI side just so I can wait. I'm a little wait and see. I want to see that they're meeting some milestones. It's difficult to remain confident in this current climate of FUD, trying to close out the noise. I think a lot of people are experiencing this. Um, what do you say to people who've lost confidence in this current, with the current sentiment that we're seeing?
Yeah. I mean, if you've lost confidence, right? I'm not the type of person to like tell people hold your bags or sell
Yeah.
everything, right? Like, I would just say, you know, look at other projects, kind of read how they're faring, kind of, get involved in their communities. And if they're doing well, why are they doing well? Why is Vivi not doing well? Like, look to kind of identify what they've done. Maybe they've been around longer, or maybe they're just very, very, very early, where they're having that kind of short-term success, because they've been able to like roll out stuff quite quickly because they're still quite small and growing. There's always reasons, right? And every company, like beyond just the superficial side of like what does their product do, there's so many layers that you will never really know unless you're part of the company. Like, what do their overheads look like? What does their like company structure look like? Is there any litigation against them? Is there like um, any kind of unique factors? Like Vivi has a lot of unique factors to consider. For example, they, unlike other products, because of the nature of the product, which is digital license collectibles, because of the licensing side and just how many licensors they work with, Vivi has a lot of partners. And because they have a lot of partners, that can slow down everything for them, right? Because sometimes they have to like, go through many, many, many people to like, do stuff. For example, the interoperability stuff, like, they have to renegotiate every single contract to date, to be like, hey, we want to move your stuff like in and out, and we have to set up this new royalty structure, blah blah blah. So just because of the nature of the product, you have to kind of anticipate for, some of the stuff with Vivi is going to take longer and some of the stuff may not work, how you initially envisioned it. Whereas, like something like, I don't know, like Illuvium, right? Is they own their IP, like the IP belongs to them. So they can do anything they want with it. And so they have less friction there when it comes to like, creative decisions or like, products that they can make with their IP. That's why they've got like 4 different games or something,
Yeah.
related to the, the alluvials. So yeah, these are all things that you need to consider. And outside of just the technology that's built on, that's another thing. And yeah, so
So in
I
other
would
words, like
say,
revisit your thesis
yeah,
and see if it's the fundamentals of the project have changed.
yeah, exactly. Because I always say, if the fundamentals haven't changed and you invested based on the fundamentals, and if the only thing that's changed is a number has gone down, then maybe you're just, being an emotional investor, right? Or emotional trader, whatever it is. And at that point, it's better to just, look at other stuff, explore other interests, hobbies, you know. But if the fundamentals have changed, which in some aspects they actually have, for as far as like Veve and Omi side is concerned, then yes, reevaluate, consider why you invest in the first place, and do those changes severely impact the reasons that you had invested in the first place? And if so, like and you want to deleverage, how much are you willing to deleverage? Because I've spoken to other people, like for example, Sam Ellis has been quite public about it, right? Like he
Yeah.
said, the team has kind of like, changed a lot of their sentiment. They're not doing some of the stuff that he believed they were going to do, because based on stuff that they were saying in the past. Like they were saying a lot of stuff in the past that he feels that they've kind of backtracked on. So he publicly said, he sold half of his stuff, and that's his way of managing his risk, right? Like you don't have to go and dump everything, right? Like manage your own risk. I'm not going to tell people like what to sell, what to buy, or how much to sell, right? Like my risk management was a bit more extreme, right? I sold basically all my Vv stuff except Tokidoki and like a Donald Duck, and that was just my decision, and I wouldn't encourage people to just copy me, right? Because that's I did have money that I felt like it was, obviously not life-changing amounts of money, but it was a significant amount that I did not want to lose. And so I was like, if the VV market recovers and goes up, that's fine. That's great for everyone. Fantastic. But if it doesn't, then I'd be quite pissed off if I lost the money that I had in my vault. So I made that decision to kind of lock everything in. And then, like with Omi wise, fortunately, like I said, I didn't go all in at one price point, and I was using profits that I made from other projects like Illuvium and Hero and things to kind of dollar cost average into Omi. So fortunately, my DCA wasn't like that bad either. Like I'm on like 0.002, which is, that's
That's
like,
about, yeah. I'm a little lower than that, like 0018 or something.
oh, that's very good. Yeah. And like if you look at it, right, like in, was it November or something, the price of Omi went back up to 0.002 off of the news that Reese was going to do a video
Right.
on the OUP article announcement. So it's like the announcement of a video announcing the OUP was enough to make the price of OMI go back to 0.002. And so I'm just thinking, if something so random, like not really that significant, like pumped OMI that much, then something that's actually got substance, like a Binance listing, or like, you know, OMI utility actually now announced and working in the app, something very
Yeah.
significant, I think that could do a lot more than just sending OMI to 0.002, right? So yeah, like, so as far as like OMI went, like I didn't feel like I needed to like, sell my OMI at, the price that it was at the time, half a year ago. Um, and now I keep some money to kind of like, a small amount to like kind of, trade some OMI whilst, holding a big chunk in cold storage. Um, and that's my decision. I wouldn't encourage anyone to copy me. I'd say, just do what you think is best for you. Um, but yeah, like, if for anyone who's like kind of, we're going through a mental crisis, like those are the kind of things that I'd probably say, give that a go.
Yeah. And definitely the sentiment is definitely down. The setup for me is still there, right? I mean, like the partnerships are still there, the collectibles, the community is still strong, even though there's a lot of negativity, but those negative people are still around, right? And I feel like they would that sentiment would change fast if they're able to execute. Now, whether or not they can execute is the question. That's kind of like the fundamental shift, right? Because they haven't proven that. And we assume that they could execute, but now they need to prove that. But do that sense also that like this thing could just like take off again only if they start executing and sentiment will change and all these people that are frustrated right now will jump back on board?
Oh, I think I'm rugging there. Just give me a
Oh,
moment.
sure. Did you hear that or no? Did you hear the question? Looks like he's buffering. We'll wait for him to get back on. Essentially, Crypto asks, Veve doesn't have any ads in the app. Would it not be a good idea? Well, he's back. Hold up.
Okay, there we go.
You're good?
Yeah, that's good. Yeah. Yeah. So I kind of like caught small bits of what you're saying. So if you could just paraphrase what you said again, that would
Yeah.
be
So
great.
basically, sentiment has been down. Do you think that, that can do a 180 based on some execution? And then maybe Veve comes back like battle tested and possibly even stronger because people see that, we've been down, got knocked down, and got back up. Fix the problem.
Yeah. Yes, 100%. Yeah. That mean you don't need like you know like years to like show change, especially in crypto.
Right.
Like one good partnership can turn it around, or like one big piece of news, right? Or one major investment, like that's enough to turn it around. Like, and I go back to Quid, right? Like Quid, they just announced their investment from Animoca Brands, and then bam, like all of a sudden, way more interest, and like that. Then they kind of announced the part, like Animoca kind of brought Quid together and combined it with Sandbox, like boom, more interest, and then because they've got a functioning metaverse and a functioning like platform where you can buy NFTs that are interoperable, that provides a good environment for licensors who maybe want to do that kind of thing. And so Toei Animation, the company that kind of has like Dragon Ball Z and all of that stuff,
Yeah.
like they went and partnered with like Sandbox now to do NFTs through there, just because they have a working ecosystem that allows you to do that. And so, yeah, like if Veve came out end of this month and said, "Hey, we stuck to our target of Q1 Veveverse," then that would turn sentiment around a lot, because then for like the first time in like since this app has been around, you now have something else apart from just buying things and putting them in a showroom. Like now there's actually finally stuff you can do, and that would bring back so many people. I would spend more time on the app, obviously desktop Weverse, but like yeah, I would spend time on it, because now you're doing something that incentivizes people to interact with your platform, and it incentivizes like a kind of gig economy, because then like the scripting involved, right, is people maybe they want some developers who they have this cool idea that they want to make, and they can't be asked to learn how to code. They'll just pay some people to kind of make stuff for them, like, and then you get this kind of like gig economy of like this people transacting with each other. Or maybe you want someone to like pimp out your showroom, you're not very creative, you want someone to
Yeah.
workaholics to spend time doing stuff.
Yeah.
If the Veveverse allows you to add a builder to your showroom to grant them access to move things around, then yeah, like that in itself could be like another way for people to kind of make money on the side.
Yeah.
So there's like so
You
many
create an
things that
economy
would,
inside of there. Even like, someone
yeah,
like VV Arcade selling his art pieces.
yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, I cut you off.
No, it's fine. Yeah, so yeah, all of that stuff I think is fantastic if they can do that. So yeah, it doesn't take a lot to turn sentiment around, because just like a small bit of news can really bring about positive sentiment. Like we've seen it, like small bits of bad news can bring down sentiment. It just so happened that for the past like year or so, like it's been consecutive bad news, which
It's
is why
compounding.
it's felt like the sentiment's been terrible for so long. because
Yeah.
but people forget like the bad news, right? Like it's been, if I was to like try and remember like all the stuff that's happened, right? You go back a year, we had all these people getting their accounts restricted because of that dude who was laundering millions of dollars through Veve, and
Yeah.
like the fraud gems, and it became like an Interpol incident. And then like a little bit later, then we had like the whole the guy who used to work for Veve launching another lawsuit against them. And then we had like the queue system that was supposed to come out, and then that got delayed. And then we had like
Yeah.
okay,
It's been
now
a
it's
lot.
just going to sound like I'm fudding Veve, but these are things that actually happened, right?
Yeah. That
And
were a
so
big deal at a
because
time, and then people moved on from them, and then something else popped up.
exactly, so that's been like the system so far.
Yeah. What about Vivi Vaults in the house? He says that Vivi treated the community poorly with a few exceptions, and they don't show any signs of changing. Do you agree with that sentiment or statement?
Um,
They've treated
oh, right. So that's, I wouldn't consider that a VV thing. I'd consider that an individual thing, because there are some people on the VV team, and there are things that they've said which I strongly disagree with, right? I'm like, like, and I've publicly stated, like, this was a dumb thing to say. Like, you should not have said that.
yeah.
Like, you're going to create a bigger divide. You're going to annoy some people, and it's just going to make the company look bad. Like, that's something you shouldn't have said. And then there are some things that, oh, and it probably didn't come from like a place of malice intent. It's just maybe that person's personality, right? Um, and then there are some things that they have, said as a response to people, which just come from a place of maybe ignorance, because they're talking about things that they don't have the right kind of subject expertise on, but they feel like they have to give a response because they've been asked a question, right? And it turns out to be like not very good response, because they've given some incorrect information, and they have to then backtrack on it. And then people, some people don't like that kind of stuff, so they'll publicly voice their frustration and kind of like attack the team. um, and sometimes the team will have their own ways of responding. Sometimes their responses aren't well received, and so it feels like like they're being unprofessional. But then some interactions with depending on the circumstances, are perfectly fine, right? So yeah, I feel like sometimes it looks that way, but maybe from my observations, right? Sometimes it looks like they give special treatment to certain individuals, but it's more so those certain individuals, the things they ask aren't like or the things that they say to the team, they're not like controversial things, or like things that can be potentially inflammatory. They're very like neutral, or very slightly positive, right? Like if I was to take Randy as an example, like if you look at the stuff that Randy says, it's always very, very positive and optimistic. Like there
Yeah.
is like no context with anything that Randy like says, but most of the time, or nearly all the time when I see him post, where it could be ever interpreted as something that is, a potential for creating some kind of argument, right? Um, like half the time Randy's posting heart emojis, like like what you're going to
Yeah.
argue
He's
about
very
that, right?
positive. Yeah. It's his
Yeah.
personality.
Whereas someone else who maybe is a bit more like confrontational, they might say stuff like, you guys missed the deadline again, and you promised this was supposed to be due. Like, what's going on? And if they get a response that's not very good, then they would probably start an argument there. And then like if that becomes a recurring thing, then the team, they're human, they're going to start to like distance themselves from that individual. And like um they're kind of doing it as a way, because they know, hey, like this person gets very confrontational, best to ignore him. And that's probably what's going to end up happening, is they're going to purposely avoid interacting with certain people, because they feel like whenever they do interact with certain people, it turns into like a Twitter argument, which kind of looks like bad PR as well. Because again, for many projects, maybe that's fine, but when you're a project where you've got like so many licensors that are always watching you, it doesn't look good when you know members of your team are in Twitter arguments, like it, or social media arguments.
Yeah.
So yeah, I can see why it feels that way. And you kind of just have to play the game. Like if you feel like you need to get like overly confrontational, then just expect to probably just get maybe ignored by them, because that's probably what's going to happen.
Josh, thanks so much for that super chat. It's a generous super chat from Josh. Appreciate it. He says they already said reserve and vault are pointless. Update tokenomics to burn circulating supply. No one would care about these delays. So I think what he's saying is that once we start burning from the circulating supply, once it's burning, and people aren't going to care, which is also kind of true, right? Because, we didn't have MTL for a long time, and there was so much negative sentiment around that. And then once we had it, we had it. So I do agree that sentiment will change fast if they're able to implement things. It's just a matter of them, though, proving that they can get those things done, because they have said that they're going to do this for quite some time. Right.
Yes.
Thanks again, Josh, for that. Blockchain Comics, we're going to see the Veveverse in Q1. Bear in mind, it's built by third party and not Veve devs. So you're expecting it not to come out in Q1.
Well, I mean, so I want it to be in Q1.
3 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, I want it because, okay, so this is the analogy I always give, right? Is you go to the store, you buy a carton of 6 eggs, you crack open one egg, it's rotten. You crack open the second egg, it's rotten. Then you crack on the third, fourth, and fifth egg. Those are also rotten. You're left with one egg, and you haven't cracked it open yet. Do you think that one egg is going to be good or rotten?
That's a good analogy.
Yeah, it's most likely going to be rotten, right? So if I apply that to Veve, right? They said, queue system, blah, 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 delayed forever. Then they said, OUP, blah, 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 we're removing the utility, and the new utility is delayed forever. They said interoperability, delayed forever, right? Okay, I'm exaggerating. It's probably not going to be delayed forever, but, for the sake of the context, it's, it wasn't done as people were told. And so even MCP, where they were saying, the delay is going to be weeks if there is a delay, not months, and it ended up being months. Because I remember it was funny. Alex was like, "We're not going to be waiting till like Q1, Q2 for MCP, are we?" And Mitch, I like Mitch, but he dug his own grave there. He's like, "No, it's going to be weeks at most." And bam, it's nearly end of Q1 and still no, MCP rolled out properly. Yes, they just recently today turned it back onto beta testers, but for me, it's only truly properly released when any user can log in and use it. Until it's at that stage, I don't consider it truly released. So yeah, if they said Veveverse Q1, and even though myself, I asked, and Randy and loads of other people, and they kept saying, yes, Q1, Veveverse, Q1, and then even towards the end of last year, are you sure it's coming out in Q1? And it's still, yep, it's target for Q1. And then it doesn't happen in Q1, did you really expect the 6th egg to be good when the other 5 were rotten? So I wanted it to be in Q1, but through logic and data and history, I was like, no, I don't think they'll do it in Q1. I don't trust them to do it in Q1 because they've been consistently wrong. And that again goes back to the point that I made before is, I would change my opinion if they could prove to me that they can deliver to a timeline and deliver well without bugs and things. So I'm waiting for them to deliver one thing really well to a good timeline, no random bugs and issues. It's just a normal release that you targeted and it's done. That's it. I'm just asking for the normal thing.
I think that's very fair. Right after everything that they promised, I think it's very fair to say, deliver something good. Immutable Nodes here. Thanks for that super chat. Why act like it was only one guy laundering gems?
Oh yeah, there were other people. Yeah. So maybe I I didn't clarify. There was when I say one guy, what I meant was there was one guy that I know of who basically they were chasing down because that one guy was kind of the person that they identified because he was basically taking cryptocurrency payments and freaking hell, like he made like at least $2 million in ETH, like off of selling, like laundered money into Veve. So he was like out there driving Lambos and stuff, right? But he was already on national television before, like in I think it was Russia, for like kind of showing off how he would like bot like sneaker websites and make money that way. And botting sneaker websites, I think it's not actually illegal. It's just frowned
Right.
upon. And I think the US, they wanted to make it illegal because when it came up to like Christmas time, a lot of people wanted to buy like certain things for Christmas. They just could never get anything, and they were like really upset. So they were
Yeah.
considering making botting illegal. Um, so yeah, like it was that dude, right? And he became a bit of a meme as well because he's got a big forehead. But yeah, apparently like it became like an international incident. Like they had Interpol and stuff, and David Yu was out there posting like, if you have evidence, like, that can help track this guy down, it would like really be helpful. Because he did make a mistake where I think he used a PayPal account, which was linked to an email, and then people were able to track that email and find it linked to an Instagram account. And then they managed to find a picture of a car where the license plate was visible. And then they then checked where that license plate was registered. And then they were like doing all this kind of like high level FBI shit to like find this guy. And I don't know if they did ever find the guy in the end,
Dude,
but
how do you remember all this shit?
oh, because I was proper like paying attention because I was like, holy crap! Because again, at the time, my vote value was worth a lot as well. Like I think my vote was worth like $400,000, right? So I was like really trying to pay attention to like what was going on because the team obviously, I still had like a lot of trust in the team. Like I still kind of trust them on certain things, but nowhere near as much as before. Like I was trusting everything they were saying. I was like, they were saying 1% bots. I was like, okay, even though the data's telling me otherwise, I'm gonna trust these guys.
You
They
know
were saying,
better
oh
than
yeah,
me.
like all the money coming into the app, like it's real people, 2.5 million users. I was like, yep, makes sense. Like $8 million in the app going in randomly in a day. That makes sense if you got 2.5 million users. Like it was all of this stuff, right? That
Yeah.
out like this data that wasn't like like
Couldn't
valid
check out.
data, and
Yeah.
so my thesis was misconstrued that for that reason. And so I was like, yo, okay, I need to follow what's going on. And I was like proper tracking what's happening. Like, I mean, I wasn't like that concerned for myself because I didn't like use these like these Telegram gem selling like two 20-cent gems or whatever, like
Yeah.
stuff that was going on. Like so I wanted to see like how this kind of unfolded because it could have resulted in some serious repercussions for Vivi in terms of like fines and like the SEC could have gotten involved in that because it did become a pretty big incident. So yeah, like it's a good one to look back on because it's one of those ones that could have actually been avoided if they had, because it happened once before, but it was on a smaller scale. It happened in like July time, and people, some people knew about it because they kind of heard, and they saw it happening as well. But and Vivi did like patch one of the exploits, but I'm certain it was known to them at the time, but I think not enough was done to prevent it happening a second time on a bigger scale. And again, that's kind of, I don't know, maybe they thought it wasn't a big enough thing to prioritize, which is a very, very big mistake because then you suffered for it. And it made us suffer for it as well, actually.
Yeah.
But yeah, like it's kind of in the past now, and it's a good thing to learn from. Um, but yeah, that's kind of like why there are certain things that if they do well now with the purpose of preventing things from going wrong in the future, like they really start investing into the tech, for all the reasons that I'm not going to go through again because it's so long.
Right.
That would make me way, way more bullish. Even if nothing happens immediately, if they make that decision, I would become way more bullish.
Right.
But I'm just waiting for that decision. Either stuff happens that's positive, that shows me that their releases are working well, or they choose to make that preemptive decision that I feel like is a good decision to make. Because that same decision IMX made when they were like smaller than Veve, and that paid huge dividends for him. The token market cap is like 3 times the size of Omi now, and they're growing every day on their socials, and like they've got they've got a ridiculous team now. Like I think honestly, my honest opinion, and just for transparency, I have like less than $100 of IMX. I don't even own that much of the token. Even though I want to buy it, but I'm not buying it yet because I feel like it is overhyped right now because of how much stuff that's come out. But like token stuff aside, right? Like objectively, I feel they've got the strongest centralized team out of any crypto project I've seen, just because how many people they've brought on board from like fan companies and like freaking high level people. And there's like a big team, big engineering team. I think the engineering team is bigger than my companies now, and like I'm not at like a small company.
Yeah.
So yeah, like with the like laundering thing and all of that stuff, yeah, there were a few people involved, but there was like one big notable guy that they were chasing down. um so yeah, that's kind of like how it unfolded at the time.
Yeah. And then another good question from Immutable is, was there actually ever really a bull run in Veve if the all-time highs were caused by, half price gems, the closed ecosystem where people couldn't cash out, there was no MTL, and then the illicit gem purchases. So does that negate the bull run, or those levels were reached, and do those become key psychological levels for the future? Regardless,
Yes, so they will be psychological levels because people will look back at that data, right? Traders, many of them will just look at the data. They won't look at the news or what caused it. Like they just look at the chart. If it's a good chart, they'll trade it. Now I would say, because I experienced and I went through it, those all-time highs are not valid for me. Like they're just not valid price points. Like I would never look at the Walt statue and be like, hey, you know, it's it just needs to go like 3x, and it's like only 20% of its all-time high. So it's a good buy for that reason. Like I would never think like that because I know those were artificial highs created by all of those reasons that we spoke about. Now it's a bull run regardless, right? Like whatever caused it, a bull run is a bull run, right? Because even real bull runs, like even the last bull run, you could come up with a reason for why there was so much ridiculous amount of money flowing into the market, is because the Fed was like like printing money and like all these stimulus checks that people, apparently 20% of people spend their stimulus check money on crypto, which I found
yeah,
hilarious.
YOLO did.
Yeah, so stuff like that, right? So you could always go back and argue and be like, oh, the last global bull run was also not real because of all these reasons. But that's the bull run and bear markets and all that stuff is a result of you know um, financial decisions made, like quantitative easing and rate hikes and
Yeah,
things. Now, again, yes, on Vv it was far more extreme. Like preventing users from cashing out, that creates a lot of gems in the app flowing. Like allowing people to bring in cheaper gems because of exploits. Again, that creates more supply of gems. There's more supply of gems, and fixed supply of collectibles, or collectible supply isn't going up as much, then yeah, the value of collectibles will go up because you have a higher supply of gems. And obviously people were seeing that, right? And the high volatility, they were seeing that because traders love volatility, right? That spread between peaks and troughs, like that's what they're looking
yeah,
for, like just that chunk in the middle. And because of that reason, a lot of people who weren't collectors, they were jumping on Vv and making accounts and getting involved as well. And so the user numbers were obviously going to be higher as well. So that contributed to the bull run. Like people would see the number of users, not just like traders, but like obviously bots as well. So again, people would see, oh wow, this app have went from 10,000 users to 2.5 million in less than a year. Like that's crazy. Like they
right.
got something there. Like this is an early stage Amazon kind of thing. But all of it, like the data was um, not valid. And so if you are around, then like, hey, you shouldn't really be using these all-time highs as like, levels to compare against. But if you weren't around, then you probably will look at those levels and be like, oh wow, everything on Vv is like super, super discounted. Like, it's a great buy.
Yeah,
Um, And to be honest, many people just don't have the time to like, do this like historical research and go through the VV archives, like, old Twitter videos and things like that. So yeah, they'll just jump on casual, look at a few things. Okay, what was the all-time high price? Okay, 90% down, I'll buy this. I got the time to like spend to deep research this stuff. I'll just ask people. So yeah, data probably not the best decision, I'd say, to use the all-time highs, but people will still use them. Mostly people who are newer to the project because they don't know, like
Yeah.
what caused it.
Another super chat from Immutable. Thanks. Did Nestor?
Hey,
This is pretty funny.
yeah.
Today, I saw this real quick. Did Nestor mean to retweet the fake Reese or not? Do you believe his excuse is a possible hack? I don't. Did he say that that was an excuse?
Yeah, he said my account's been compromised, and I was laughing when I read that. Okay, so firstly, right, okay, it was funny
It
because
was funny.
he retweeted something that I would expect, like, like someone who's like a VV troll to retweet, right? Because it was kind of funny. Because the
And
thing
fake
that he
Reese
retweeted
almost
was,
catches me. To be fair, fake Reese almost catches me once in a while.
yes, so he doesn't catch me when I see him on a post, but he catches me sometimes when it pops up in my notifications because it
Yeah.
only shows the name, it doesn't show the handle.
Right.
And I'm used to seeing Reese pop up in my notifications because he follows me, I follow him. And so whenever it pops up, like I'm just used to assuming it's Reese, and I'll click on it, and then I'll see the handle, and it's like at Jen blah 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 blah. And I'm like, oh, it's fake Reese again. And so it's funny, right? But yeah, basically the tweet I retweeted was something like, Vivi had just hired a bunch of devs from India, which is why they don't get anything done for 2 years. And I read that because I laughed, right? And like so like like I'm technically Indian as well, right? Well, I'm like half Indian, half Pakistani, but they used to be like the same country. So like my 23andMe says like, hey, I'm basically Indian, right? So yeah, like I can't be really accused of like being racial or discriminative when I say this stuff. But um, the post itself was funny because if you've been in the tech industry for long enough, like there is historical truth. And I think Omi the Clown, he did actually point it out as well, right? And Omi the Clown, he's definitely not Indian, but like historically, the way that it worked is, you know, tech was like the only real job that you could do remotely, right? And so in a country at the time, which was kind of like still very developing, like India's still actually quite developing, but some parts are like proper well developed, like Mumbai, right? Like that's more expensive than London now to live in.
Yeah.
And so, you know, tech was literally the only thing you could do remotely. Whether that be, tech call centers where you help people, or tech call centers where you scam people, or like, just doing like freelance jobs, right? And because it wasn't like, as technology became more widely available, like laptops became cheaper, mobile phones, a lot of people were learning to code on mobile phones. It just became like the obvious choice. Like you could learn, some coding, make websites, and then all of a sudden just throw yourself out there, be like, hey, I can make a website for like, 10% of the cost of, what it would cost you in the US, for example, right? And that money would like basically, you could like live like a king in India.
Yeah.
So there is obviously like, what happened was a lot of people ended up outsourcing to India way too much, right? Because so there are some very, very good engineers that I found who came from India, but they were the ones who were from India and they moved, or they got hired into companies like Amazon or my company, for example, and they are like really, really good people, like engineers. Um, so you will get like these individuals, but typically, like, the stereotype is because, like the companies themselves, they're not typically based in India, so you don't get like that proper, like, uh, I guess like proper like company corporate like industry experience, right? When it comes to development, like doing open source stuff and self-teaching yourself is very, very different to getting proper industry experience and being exposed to like, good practices and things. So typically when people outsource too much, yes, they could get an app built for them, but it's very unlikely to be built with like industry standard practices, good practices, and it's going to be scalable and maintainable. It's going to be written with spaghetti code, because if all you want is an app to do X, Y, and Z, they could probably do that for you, but you're probably going to have to rebuild the whole app once you get users anyway,
Yeah.
and hire an in-house team. And that's what my company was like, because we initially started with a bunch of contracted guys from India and some people in the UK, and then they brought in more contractors from the UK, got rid of some of the ones from India, and they only kept the QA testers. And then even now they've like scaled back on the QA testers, because because software development is always like a evolving practice. So now the current modern way of developing software is called shift left. So basically, before we'd have silos where you'd have like front end team, back end team, QA team, DevOps team, product owner, like everyone's siloed. And now it's shifted to what actually Mitch said. Veve is now moving towards this practice as well, where you don't have like segregated teams like that. Instead, you have teams that are dedicated based on product vertical. So you don't have like a backend team, front end team. You might have a payments team, or you might have a like a VV market team, or in our company we have like a credit team, because we do credit products, right? So we handle like credit history, like credit, sign up, payments, things like that. So yeah, like all of that stuff, like that good practice, it's something that you typically, and it's not like something that is as a result of because you reside in India. Like that's not the case. It's just because of the way that the economy has developed, and like the social factors as well. Like India was a developing country. Tech was just an easy way of finding income because it's remote. Now there are a lot more jobs you can do remotely. So I imagine, you're going to get a lot of people in these countries that are still developing, like India, looking to do these other remote jobs that are outside of tech, not just focused on tech now, right? Like I've seen like people who are like they do like mentoring, like online, like therapy, things like that. So if you can do it online, then that's fantastic for developing countries, especially if you're getting paid like even like 10% of like a US salary, like that's good for them. So yeah, like so I can see like the point that the person was trying to make. And when I saw the retweet from Nesta, I laughed because I was like, maybe he's like agreeing, but then I was thinking, oh wait, but it's the way that it's been phrased. It's like so inflammatory. Like like there are so many ways to phrase it in like a non-controversial way, right? Like kind of like how I've kind of explained it, like the history of it and why it's, that stereotype exists. But then I was like, you know what? Maybe he just did it accidentally, like because when he then said, "Oh, my account is compromised," that was the red flag. I was like, "Yo, like, okay, so like, forgive me for maybe being insensitive to my own people, right? Like, whether you think that maybe it's a racial thing, I think that's not as bad as him saying, I've been compromised, because the whole point of like why they kind of kept Nesta's like identity down low is for so long, right? I think Reese has like said this on the Discord AMA as well himself, is Nesta has the keys to the VV assets. Like, you
Yeah.
don't own your keys. Technically, Nesta owns your keys. Like he's the CTO. Like the CTO has the keys to everything. And so if the person who has the keys to all your stuff on Vivi has been compromised, that is as big of a red flag as you can put out there. Imagine if, for example, right, like CZ Binance tweeted and said Binance's systems have been compromised. What do you think would happen? People would be selling their stuff on Binance, moving that stuff out. They'd be sending panic dumping it, like like it'll be caused so much panic. So for the CTO, the guy who has the keys to all your VV stuff, has now said he is compromised. I personally thought that was way worse of a thing to say. But
Probably
then he
just
did come
bugged
out and
out. He's probably bugging out. Didn't want to get attacked by like, people
yeah,
for
what he should have said is what he then ended up saying is he kind of tried to like rectify it, right? He said, I tried to hit the report button because it was a fake Reese, and instead he retweeted it by accident and he didn't realize. And when he saw the like notifications, he thought maybe his account had been compromised. That's how he then explained it as. And now, so I ain't gonna argue with whether he was being truthful or not. Like That's what he said. That's your decision if you want to believe it or not. But like this is a bigger issue where I feel like and it's happened a few times where I think things that are said, like you need to really understand the context and like all of the things holistically that could happen before you say things. If you're the CTO and people know you have the keys to all the VV stuff and you publicly announce you have been compromised, what do you think is going to happen? Like, you think about these scenarios before you say stuff publicly, please. It will save you headache, it will save the company headache, and it will save people from potentially having a heart attack as well if they see this kind of stuff.
I guess
But
there's a learning curve though to being, he's not used to being like, every tweet being dissected or whatever and being analyzed. So it's a good lesson. It's a good lesson for Nestor. I do think it was just like an accidental retweet. He saw something.
Nestor is newer to the team, and he probably doesn't understand. Like, he probably isn't aware of how many I would say analytical people there are in the Veve community. I think Veve has the most analytical Web3 community out there by far, just from what I've seen. By analytical, I mean like
We're
all round.
Shit.
All round. So it's a lesson to him, and because he's newer, like I'd give him a pass. Because if it becomes a repeat thing, then fine, fair enough. But like it was funny anyway. I found it funny.
Yeah, me too. Reese was on Okomiverse recently. He was talking about he's not going to give up anything on exchanges, obviously. Talked about getting the web wallet is like the next big thing in terms of like OUP, and that's like a catalyst for other developments. How long do you think that like should take, like a web wallet technically? Do you have any idea? Is that a complicated thing to build out?
No, it's not complicated, but again, that if you're building it from scratch as a brand new thing, right, from like the service for it, if it's a greenfield project, typically it can be done easily. Like, not easy, but it can be done, without too much effort because you're building it from the first time, right? If you're trying to integrate it with your existing infrastructure and your existing infrastructure needs to also be changed to support it, then it becomes more complicated, right? And if you've got dependencies on other teams as well, and you need them to release certain things to support what you're developing, then it becomes even more of an issue. So again, going back to my egg analogy, for Veve, I think it's going to be freaking hard for them to do. I ain't going to sugarcoat it. I think it's going to be freaking hard for them to do for Veve, right? But objectively,
even with like Mitch on board and having like a team dedicated to OUP now, maybe better systems in place.
So complexity isn't the same as time required to do it, right? I think complexity wise, I think it's going to be freaking hard for them to do correctly and properly, because of all of the things that I've spoken about. Time wise, I think if they give a reasonable timeline, which I think, I don't know, maybe they don't want to give timelines anymore. I think it shouldn't take a stupid amount of time if they now have a proper team dedicated to it, right? So the saving grace is what they're trying to do by having a spot wallet in the app where you can buy OMI from. That's not a novel thing at all. So many projects have done this, right? To add a wallet to a platform where you can buy their token. Like, it's a very, very common thing. So there are so many ways, open sourced ways to do it. There are like gold standards, I'm sure that there are like, contracts out there where, people just take them and adapt them slightly. I think it shouldn't be a difficult thing, but it might end up being a difficult thing just because, what history has shown me, going back to the egg example, is things that sound like they should be easy, typically they can be quite difficult. Like, for example, adding some points to your profile should not have taken 2 years and had all these difficulties, but there we go. Like, that is what it is, right? So yeah, I'm just trying to be as realistic as possible. Some people might think it's FUD, but I haven't been shown anything to make me think otherwise yet. So that's just my mindset right now.
And are you concerned about the lack of exchanges? Everyone, we talk about it a lot, but everyone always brings it up because obviously, crypto is cyclical, and next bull run's kind of around the corner, Bitcoin halving and whatnot. People want to be well positioned. They want OMI to be well positioned. They've been stacking, and they've been told for years, right, that we would get exchanges. Do you think that they'll come through on that, or is that like the same thing, cracking the egg?
Yeah. Again, I haven't really. Okay. So there have actually been, like exchanges. They have actually in the past delivered on some exchanges which they had announced, and they did like these cool kind of promos. So the one that comes to mind was the OKX one, right? So the OKX one was pretty cool because they announced it, they released it, they delivered it, and then they did this thing where if you traded a certain amount of OMI on OKX, like volume wise, then your account could be whitelisted for a giveaway that Veve was doing with NFTs. And so I did it, and I ended up actually winning one of the prizes. I got a secret rare Star Wars lightsaber, which is really cool, right? The Ahsoka one. So they have done it in the past, right? So, and typically with exchange listings, because it's not so Veve's weakness, I feel like, is the technical debt that they've
Right.
gone. But that has no impact on, like, no direct impact on whether you can list on an exchange or not, right? Like, you just need a token, that's it. And because that weakness isn't gonna kind of hold them back from listing, it's not gonna, cause them any direct issues that I can think of. I think they can actually deliver on exchanges. Now, they may have reasons for choosing not to go on exchanges directly. I know they've changed their reasons a lot. It started off with, like, we need to get off GoChain, we need to be RC20. Oh, we need like to do utility, and then like this,
Bear
that, and the
market.
other. Yeah, bear market. Like, I know they've changed the reasons. I think maybe there's some other reason that they don't want to share. But whatever that reason is, I know at least if they wanted to, they have the ability to do it without having major issues, right? So I think what could be an issue, right, is I remember David kind of, in a way, it felt like he was taking credit for them not listing on FTX.
Right.
But the danger that we currently have, right, is there's only a couple of exchanges with any real volume for OMI. Ascendex has some, but it's mainly Bitforex because that's the first exchange that they went on, and it's the only exchange with any kind of real liquidity that US users have access to as well. Because I don't think US users have access to Ascendex, region issues. So hypothetically, if Bitforex were to go down, ends up like, because exchanges, they go down all the time, right?
Yeah.
If Bitforex went down, the only real exchange that has liquidity for your US users is gone, then that's going to like really screw up the price of OMI. Like, now it's even more susceptible to manipulation. People they haven't got an easy way to access it. Like, and the liquidity on like the DEXs is quite low as well. For OMI specifically, right? Like other tokens, it's fine, but OMI,
Right.
the liquidity pool on Uniswap is only like 100K worth of tokens in there. Like, and you only get like a couple of transactions a day. So that you have now created that situation for yourself by ignoring or not prioritizing, solving the liquidity issue. And David himself has gone out and said publicly, he understands the liquidity issues from lack of exchanges for OMI. They want to get on more exchanges. This was like, like kind of April time, 2021, when they were hyping up May and saying, hey, we're going to do like 4 exchanges. We've got some top tier ones. And then, that kind of had a bunch of delays. So yeah, like, I think with the exchanges, I think they can deliver those because it's not so much dependent on their tech or anything like that. But I don't know if they have some underlying reason for why they want to continue to delay that. But they do need to be aware of the risks where if Bitforex were to hypothetically go down, they've just screwed over a lot of their, or all of their token holders pretty much.
Yeah. And when I was thinking about, though, the incentive for them to get OMI listed is there, right? Because when I was thinking about the profitability of Veve and really how much, how the gems are also a liability, they hold a lot of OMI, right? What do they have, like
Yeah.
30 billion or something?
Yeah. I think like Dave and Dan have like 30 billion each, something like that.
30 billion each. So if OMI were to hit 5 cents, they're billionaires. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
yeah, I did the math.
On paper, yeah. I don't know if the
On
liquidity would
paper, right?
exist
We
for them
can't
to sell
cash
that
out.
much. Yeah.
But yeah,
Because even in the last bull run, selling like 1 billion, that had like a noticeable effect on the price. But obviously not a lot. Like, it would send the price down like maybe 3-4%. But
yeah,
now if you were to sell 1 billion tokens, like you could probably just send the OMI back to like quadruple zeros.
yeah. So, the incentive is there, and I keep that in the back of my mind. I do think that there is something underlying, whether it's the regulatory, them not wanting OMI to, mess up the VV side of things and taking things. I know Reese has used the word conservative. And my take on that is they're conservative because like they have one foot in the real business world, one foot in the crypto world, and they kind of have like this identity crisis. Here's
Yeah.
another question from Immutable. Thanks for the super chat. Will the MetaMask Unity SDK help the Vv verse?
No, not really. No, not directly. Because the SDK for Immutable, for Unity, basically is quite similar to what you have with VR chat, because they created a Unity SDK as well. So basically, actually no, I'll take that back. It's more similar to Moralis actually. So Moralis is one that I have used. So basically, what Moralis wanted to do is they did exactly what IMX is doing in terms of their vision. So with game developers, right, is game developers, because I've built a few games myself, right, and I've been involved in that community. They're very passionate people. Like, they develop games because they like developing games, right? They're not there for the bag, which unfortunately businesses know that and they take advantage of it. So in the tech industry, if you're a game dev, you're typically on the very lower end of devs, basically, in terms of pay, salary, like compensation. So if I was to do at my level, because that's partly why I work predominantly as a backend developer in finance, so fintech as well, is because fintech is a very heavily paid industry, and backend engineers are specifically, working with APIs and databases and things. They are more, you know, heavily paid than, like people who work in, exclusively front end, or like, you know, um, niche things like, just cloud-based platforms or QAs and testers, things like that. So game devs, they get the short end of the stick because companies will exploit their passion and purposely pay them less because they know that these people are doing it as a passion, right? And companies will do that all the time. So what a lot of these game devs do is they love building games, but they're not so much about, learning smart contracts and things. So these SDKs, it allows you to basically write in native code, like, which could be C# or Java, or a Unity uses C#, so let's say C sharp, right? Is you don't have to learn Solidity to start building Web3 games, which typically you would have to but if you have an SDK that basically passes the C# code into something that can be read um, as Solidity code for smart contracts, then you can continue to spend more time building the game and less time worrying about smart contracts and things, because the package, the SDK, kind of manages a lot of that for you. And so it's a good thing for game developers, and it allows more game developers to experiment with NFTs without necessarily spending time fiddling around with blockchains. So yeah, Moralis did that first with their SDK. So they have a Unity one where you can build like games for Nintendo, Xbox, like web games, mobile games, and all interact with like MetaMask wallets and things. Immutable X has taken that step further and kind of integrated with their own APIs. So that is good because it's going to allow more game devs to work with Web3, and it's going to bring more game devs into the IMX ecosystem. And the more games that get developed and built on IMX, the more exposure, the more adoption. And so it's just another reason why I'm personally like very bullish on Immutable, because they're doing these things which is pushing the industry forward and creating a lot of adoption, and it's working as well. Like they're not just talking about it, but they're doing it. And so yeah, I've already kind of seen people who are game devs that are now kind of using the SDK, and it just works. So yeah, like I think it's not necessarily going to be directly beneficial for the Veveverse, because Veveverse is built on with Cavernous, and it's completely separate thing, right? Their Cavernous is its own kind of ecosystem, and they don't use C#. They use TypeScript, I believe. So you have to learn TypeScript, which is not a difficult language to learn, anyways. Still like similar to Java and C#. But yeah, like there will be some like indirect benefits, I guess. If you get more game devs into Web3 development, then some of them will want to like diversify and look for other platforms to build on as well, once they realize the benefits of building in Web3. And so you might get some game devs who find Veve as a result, and they're like, oh, let me try building in this Veveverse thing. Some people might want to pay for my services, yada yada yada. But I don't think it will like have a direct impact. It'll be like an indirect impact that way.
Yeah. Thanks, My Collectibles, for the super chat.
A
Yeah.
MC.
Yeah, we did a stream a couple weeks ago. It was great chatting with him. There was one chat. Was it here? Here, this guy right here. This is interesting. I respect Danny and Kay. They keep it real and fair on their takes. There's a difference between FUD and constructive feedback. Do you struggle with that sometimes? Giving constructive feedback. Some people take it as negativity, FUD, etc. Is it counterproductive sometimes, like to vent too much? Reese said that, like when someone said, how can the community help? He said, well, kind of like take it easy on Twitter. Like don't go too hard, because people see the outsiders see the community members and get a negative impression.
Yeah, so I can see why he would say that, and I partially agree. Yeah, like but at the same time, I disagree with that statement as well, because and I'll give you very good examples, right? Is when I joined Veve, obviously they were doing some great stuff, right? But people who had been there from the start, who were in Telegram, they kind of knew the whole controversy happening with one of the kind of Veve partners who had a crap ton of tokens and dropped a lawsuit and got even more tokens as a result. So those people knew there was like, and one person who's a super OG kind of explained to me like a while back, like, this individual, he like appears in like cycles, like his FUD cycles. And he has like, a lot of people who are like kind of like in his circle as well that kind of, perpetuate the FUD and stuff like that, right? Like when they want. So had I known about that, like had that been obvious to me, because people were outspoken about it on Twitter, because people weren't, because it was a very small group at the time that knew. And I think they all kind of kept it to themselves, right? Probably because they didn't want to FUD their own bags. So if I had known about that, that would have played a big role in my decision of how much money I chose to put into Veve at the start. I would not have gone as hard as I did on Omi, like at the start, right? Because
Yeah.
I admit I bought some Omi at 1 cent. That kind of screwed up my DCA.
At 1 cent, nice.
Yeah,
Not nice,
yeah,
actually.
because people are like, hey, it's gonna go to 10 cents or 1 cent, like
Yeah,
it's a 10x from there. But yeah,
tuition.
there was like other stuff that was happening, like some people had their Omi that they had put into the Veve app, because you could use Omi to NFT back, or Omi to gems. That used to be a thing, and then you could
Yeah.
use the gems to buy the collectibles. But what happened was when they disabled it, some people who had stored their Omi on Veve, their Omi transaction, it was kind of frozen, so they couldn't pull their Omi out and sell their Omi on the exchange whilst it was pumping. So basically, because like there were people who just casually had like hundreds of millions of Omi, right? Because it was dirt cheap when they got in. So there was like people with like hundreds of millions of Omi that was just stuck on the app, that they, in transactions and things. So when Omi was pumping, they couldn't sell. And so that contributed to a bigger pump than should have happened. And I didn't know a lot of this stuff until later on. And if that people had been outspoken about it on Twitter and said, yo, I have hundreds of millions of Omi stuck in the app, I cannot withdraw it, I want to sell it, what are you guys doing? If I had seen that on Twitter, right, that would have played a factor. So like I understand, yes, it kind of puts off new people, but okay, maybe I'm like an overly, moral person, right? Like, or maybe I've just got like a big conscience, right? Is I don't feel comfortable hiding things from new people. I would want them to know all the crap so that they don't get screwed over like I did. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, I disagree with the statement of like, toning it down on Twitter. What should be the correct response is give people a reason to tone it down on Twitter. You know, just deliver stuff, and
Yeah.
people will go back to the positive sentiment, because the sentiment was very positive. Even if you discount like stuff that people didn't know, right? There were many reasons to be positive, because they were doing stuff like, they announced the Disney partnership, they did the IMX migration, they I can't remember what else they did, but they did stuff, right?
Mhm.
And so people were positive because there were reasons. So rather than telling people to tone down how much they're voicing their frustration on Twitter, give them reasons to tone it down. Like that will be the correct way to go about it. Because as a like seeing just how okay, so fortunately, because of my sensible side, I wasn't one of those people who just went all in at one price point, and I personally don't like. It's not something I would recommend someone to do, right? But there were people who were like stacking Omi at like Andre Jick, good example, right?
Yeah, he
Andre
bought
Jick,
the tops.
he bought the top, and
Yeah.
it's so like, okay, I mean the guy's already wealthy, right? I assume he is, like he's got all these other property investment stuff,
Yeah.
but he bought 13 million Omi for like over 1 cent. So he said he put 150K, $150,000 into buying the Omi token, and he bought 13 million tokens. Now, if you were to buy 13 million tokens, that would cost you like 12K,
13,000
right?
about, a little less than
Yeah. So
13,000.
on paper, Andre Jick has lost $138,000. Now, for some people who maybe if they had spent that much, but they didn't have, multiple other investments and savings, like that was, they went through a house remortgage or something, that
Yeah.
person is screwed. Like they are like, there is no, I ain't sugarcoating it. They are screwed. Like, they are royally obliterated. So like, and I don't, okay, maybe other people feel comfortable and they're fine with like, doing people dirty like that. But for me, like, if there's something wrong with the platform, I will publicly talk about it, and I would want new people to know, because then if a new person sees this stuff and they see all the information, the good and the bad, and then they choose to enter the project, I know that that person is going to be a good thing for the project, because that person is looking beyond, just the negatives. They're looking at the vision. There's someone who's going to be a long-term holder, and long-term holders are better for the ecosystem overall than people who just want to come in, buy, flip, get out. Like that's better, and that's what I would prefer. So yeah, like if you hide the negatives and just let people see the positives, you're going to get a lot of people who are just going to go in and out, and that's like that it's funny and it's ironic, because I know they've publicly said they don't want the token to be a pump and dump, but hiding the negatives or like encouraging people not to talk about the negatives because it puts new people off, that's in a way manifesting a environment for a pump and dump, which I disagree with. So to that to that suggestion, I say no. I will continue to talk about all the negative things, and I will happily do it because I don't want to screw over new people. That's my response.
Yeah, and I think it's important to be, if you do it in a constructive way, that's
Yes,
not
but do it in a constructive way. Yes, that okay. So I will say do it in a don't. So there's two. It's funny because there are some people who do it in a very conspiracy kind of way, where they host a space and they'll title it "Vivi is rug pulling you," and here is some documents where I'm going to take a bunch of stuff out of context and show you, like how Vivi is rug pulling you. Like that kind of stuff is okay. Now you're doing things that again are not right, because now you're feeding people false information rather than hiding information, right? Um, because a lot of the stuff is quite conspiracy. Like it's not proven. Like it's a narrative that you're trying to push because maybe maybe your bags are down, like, you know, and you're frustrated, and you think this is
Maybe
the way
you're
that you're
mad
going
at
to
the
encourage
team.
change. Like, you know, don't do that, right? Have a proper, like, take the facts, come forward with a good argument. And if you're going to talk about stuff that's wildly conspiracy, you know, you gotta say, you know, clearly that this is speculation. This is what I think based off of what I can tell, but it's not fact, but it's just the way I feel, right? And if new people are listening to that, then at least they know, oh, okay, this isn't real. This is, you know, what this person believes. It might be true, might not be true, but most sensible people, they'll be able to make an informed decision based off of that. Because, you know, if you've been in crypto for a while, you know that a lot of stuff is speculative and a lot of stuff is not true. So, but it's stuff that is true, you know, you can definitely factor that in. So yeah, I would say don't, yeah, like, yes, tone it down on Twitter in terms of like, don't be like overly aggressive and attack the team, because that doesn't achieve. Because whenever I talk about, you know, things, I never attack the team members, right? Like, I think that's just unproductive. Like, I will attack the argument, I will attack the decisions that were made, but I will never go out and say, you know, Reese is blah blah blah, or Alex is blah blah blah, or David is blah blah blah. Like, because it's just not productive. Um, so yeah, I would say come at it at a constructive standpoint, but continue to voice your, you know, voice your opinions. If it's negative, then voice it, because new people deserve to know, but do it in a way where it's like, you know, not overly conspiracy theorist, and, you know, like, something that I would say is probably like kind of fudding.
Yeah, I think that's a good place to leave off. This was another good chat, another constructive chat. You know, all things based on observable stuff, right? So thanks
Mm.
again for coming on, man. I always appreciate these talks,
Yeah, yeah. Thanks for having me on. Yeah, it was fun.
and we'll do it again sometime. Thanks for everyone in the chat for coming through, participating. See you all in the next one.
Peace.
Peace out.